Hmm.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Check-in, the Cashout Cavaliers official podcast episode. Technically three, but it is episode two. As before we start talking about any of the today's topics, we could swiftly touch upon why there was no episode two last week, as it wasn't our fault. Well, indirectly, we did record a podcast last Sunday. We did record a podcast. However, we happened to get into slightly some topics that YouTube's auto moderation program picked up, and they sent it to manual review. However, because our channel is quite small and very new, it probably will never be in a manual renewed, which means it will probably never release. If it does get approved at some point in the future, we might publish it at a later date, but we haven't decided that yet.
Yeah, so like the it we won't say the topic because we actually want to record this podcast. But there was some, like, it wasn't necessarily political, but like in this climate, it could be seen as controversial. So yeah, we decided not to post it. But yeah, anyways, like, how's it going, Alex? What's new with you?
Oh well, not much. Had a busy week. Been a lot to work to. I'm happy to be here to record a pod. Please excuse my voice. It's if it's a bit off. I did wake up sick this morning, but we're gonna push through. We have a lot of interesting stuff to talk about today. But first, I would like everybody to notice this. Nice little layout we have gotten ourselves here, and all of our socials are on the bottom line. So please go and follow and subscribe to all of them. That's always much appreciated when you can keep up with the team.
Yeah, not looking at you, zombie gamers. 35 views, one follow.
Yeah,
Tears.
yeah.
That oh yeah, no. Also, new this is the last time you guys are gonna see this very generic gray background of a room. I found a place to move. So I'm moving in 3 days, which is really nice. It's I'm no like we consider renaming the org Under the Bridge Gaming. When like I it was like 2 weeks out, but I didn't know where to go. But yeah, luckily I've always got a home, so the pods will keep flowing.
Yeah,
Let's go.
luckily Anton does have a home now and doesn't need to sit under the bridge in front of a fire canister and hope for the best. So that's always a good sign. You touched upon Sami Gaming there slightly. Maybe we should start with that sequence. As of course all of you know and all of you watched, we did play our second match of this season last Tuesday, which will be is about a week ago now. Versus Sami Gamers, we came into the match very confidently, and ended up not going the way we wanted it to go.
Yeah, we had a solid showing on their Mac pick. It was Vertigo, right?
That's
Uh,
right, their map was Vertigo. We chose Anubis, and Decider would have been Overpass.
yeah, but it looked we lost like barely on we lost barely on Vertigo, and I think we played fine there. It happens sometimes you lose maps, but on Anubis it was clear that like there were some fights that we should have won, where the shots just weren't hitting. And yeah, it's I think it's one of the problems, or not the problems, but it's one of the realities with like esport, with like FPSs, where like you have very low time to kill, is that sometimes you just don't feel good, and or the players don't feel good, they don't feel comfortable, and sometimes just things are get messed up, right? And yeah, it does put, we still have the hope of finishing top two, top three. But yeah, now like we lost both to both 2-0 teams, but it doesn't really mean that much. We still need to actually find a win to make us more comfortable. Because if you start losing and it ends up being like you end up going 0-3, it even if you're like even if like you're the best player in the world, like even if you're dog, you're like, okay, what's going on? Like, is something wrong? Like, should I adjust my play? Should I just stop playing? Like, stuff like that happens to athletes' heads when you're under pressure.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that pressure will always build during a season, winning or losing. But I think the pressure really is on now because the boys have been super motivated to play and they're practicing a lot and they're putting a lot of effort. And sometimes it just doesn't go your way. I think Vertigo probably should have won that map. We had a few weak rounds towards the end of the map where we lost a 2v1 situation we shouldn't have, and then into overtime it got a bit awkward. But on our map, pick of Anubis completely blown out in many aspects. At the end of the day, it is just unlucky. Sometimes, as you said, shots just don't hit, but you just have to adjust and counter to that and work with it. There's not a lot else you can do. But we are still aiming for a top finish this season. Starting OT down is not as bad as it seems. Pressure's on, but pressure's also important to perform well. The best athletes always perform the best under pressure when you have that stress momentum as an extra driving force instead of being relaxed or getting too laid back. It's just important that that pressure doesn't uh, crack the team, but instead helps it as a beneficiary factor, making it better.
Hmm. Yeah, like from my experience, like if you go to an event and you don't feel pressure at all, it means that you're probably gonna really underperform and struggle. And it's because like it's one of the biggest like first of all, if you don't feel stressed at all, it means that you haven't put enough work into it. Because the one aspect of the one aspect of competitive sport is that you get maybe like 2 hours to play a game or like 1.5 hour, but like y for those 2 hours you have like 250 hours behind you. And it's very natural to feel that sense of fear where like, oh, is all my hard work going to waste? And if you don't have that fear, that means that you haven't applied yourself enough. And also it's just also fear in general is just a good thing to have because it makes you think, it makes you not complacent. But sometimes the thing is real hard to like find what's like your optimal balance is for you. For example, my optimal mindset is when I'm either extremely cocky. I don't respect my opponents at all. I look at them as uh, peasants that are just there to fill my storyline, or I'm terrified, or I'm just like, oh, okay, everyone's gonna kill me. I'm gonna get spawn peeked, rotated on, like I'm gonna cry. Yeah, and then like suddenly like stuff goes, and then because I'm so afraid, I'm gonna like start to really overthinking it. Um, but yeah, like what's your approach when it comes to managing stress and fear and anxiety during events?
Well, I think you got into a few very good lines there. For me personally, when I used to compete more at a professional level, for me it was always the kind of the fear of losing, not just necessarily the fear of losing, but the just imagining losing was just not a possibility. There wasn't even an idea in my head that I could lose. And when I
Mm,
went into every single match, not wanting to win, but seeing losing as impossible, I rarely did lose, and that's how I got most of my top results. Both in sports and in esports for that sake, because when you make losing unimaginable, not possible to yourself, then you usually do perform quite well. So I think that kind of having that kind of beneficiary, not just wanting to win, but being directly afraid of losing, because when you activate a bit more of that fight or flight response, when you can take yourself up to like the sixth gear, right, the next gear and the next floor, and really leveling up your performance naturally, where you could really push yourself to the limits. I think that's quite important, and well, from a psychological standpoint, this thing is basically with stress, or what we often call in psychology for arousal levels, because stress is often a negatively connotated word. So in psychology, we should just refer to it as arousal. There is most theories support an inverted U hypothesis, where if you have zero stress, you'll start like a bottom level and you'll perform like not very well. But then there's a curve up with the more you stress or the more arousal you have, up until like an optimal performance point. And if you pass it, that means you get overly anxious, overly stressed. You then decrease the performance and then you're back down. So your U hypothesis, and it basically states that there is an optimal point of arousal or stress where you do perform your best, where you do your best. And how do you get to that level? That depends on the athlete, depends on the person. And also, what level is the best level for people to perform at also depends on the person. But you definitely want to have some kind of stress or anxiousness going with you when you are competing, because that's just the kind of passion, the passionate side of you as an athlete. And I think if you lose that passion, or you don't have that passion in your moments of competing, I think it's very, very difficult to be consistent and win consistently. Yeah, so I think I think there's a lot of good in what you said there, and I think that's a lot of what we'll be seeing from our team going into our next match, which is next week, our first league match, and then this weekend we'll also be participating in the Bergen Games qualifiers, qualifier 1 and 2. If we don't qualify the first time, of course, which we are, of course, hope we do.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, and we're gonna be streaming those qualifiers. Hopefully only one. But yeah, I think we have a pretty good shot. And yeah, as you said, like it's as you said when like you were like talking about how it's not how it's like you perform best when you can't imagine yourself losing. That's why like lost streaks are so dangerous, because you have like proof in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's you you are like, yeah, no, I will win, and then like you see your score line, you're like down 0-2, and you're like, wait, am I really saying that, or am I just being like a completely delulu and not really thinking that? But yeah, like it and like this this concept of like arousal, that like you have an optimal level of arousal is also it can also be shown in like, for example, playing ranked with your friends, because you have, for example, a lot of people that experience ranked anxiety because they are too focused on getting the LP or the points or getting up the ranks, that like it start negatively impacting their performance. And it's honestly like it's a really hard thing to do or to manage, because it's like, for example, with bodybuilding, where a lot of bodybuilders say that like resting is the hardest part of the sport. Like being able to manage your nerves and manage and like be honest with yourself what's like the optimal environment for you is really important, and it's real hard, because when you, for example, let's say when you are training, it's very easy to like just be like, okay, I'm gonna play 10 hours of Face It every day for 6 days a week. Uh, and you can just like you can kind of just go through the motions and be satisfied with yourself, because like you have put a goal, and you automatically achieve it just by doing the motions. But yeah, but like managing stress and managing and like trying to understand yourself is the very hard, because like it's often it shows you the part of you that you don't want to see, you don't want to admit. For example, for me it was always that um I am always too cautious of a player, both in sports and esports and everything. And I would always need to remind myself that like being on the defensive all the time is not a good thing. And it's such things that like I could when I succeeded the most in like fencing or card games or stuff like that, it was always because I admitted that I was playing it too safe and I need to take risk, and that was probably one of the hardest thing I've done in like yeah, in any competitive field. Um, yeah. Uh, yeah,
The-
that was like a little
yeah.
tangent.
Yeah, no, but do think that finding that balancing act is really difficult, and it's when you find you can start adjusting yourself more compared to playing aggressively, playing defensively, and having a good variety of these to see where your strengths lie and how the difference between is how you want to win and how you actually do win.
Mm,
And I think that's an important point to find. And I think furthermore, what you said about all getting on the rank right and people are very stressed about their ELO or RP or whatever system is used. It's a very common thing you see, and it's when you lose focus of your tasks. Instead of
mm,
focusing on winning the game or winning the round or winning that one trade, getting the right read in the moment, just moving your crosshair correctly if we're talking about Counter Strike, playing the right opening theory if we're talking about chess. I mean, instead of focusing on all the small things that actually make you win the game, people have a tendency to get so worried about the elo or the score, or the rank or whatever that they actually forget about what gets them there. And if you, as you said, if you hop on for 6 days a week and play 10 hours of Face It every day, that's great. Maybe you get better, maybe you don't. Maybe you get worse at the end of the day. Because if you aren't focused on all the small tasks and all the part goals that you have to master to become a holistic player, you will never really improve, and it won't actually help you. And I think that's something that's really important to realize. I have a good friend that's bounces between 2,200 and 1,800 rating on in chess because he'll play 40 and 100 games a day and he'll lose like 80 of them. He'll lose basically 90% of his games for a day, and then he'll tilt. He'll take 2 weeks off chess, and then he'll come back, and then he's read up on some stuff and he's studied more theory and he plays that theory correctly, and then he gets rolling and he gets back up, and then suddenly he's just like, ah, fuck it, I'm gonna go grinding today. So he
mm,
grinds, but again, in the moment, his goal is I'm just going to grind this many games, and I'm going to
mm,
get this much more elo instead of what his focus was the week earlier, which was I'm going to play my techniques correctly. I'm going to practice this and this, and when the end goal suddenly becomes so much more important than the work you're doing in between, it is really really difficult to consistently win. It's almost impossible because then you're pushing like a mental beneficiary over the physical attributions that you need to put into the game to win.
mm. Yeah, like the thing about that, like, it's so funny because like I have like a kind of a uh an anecdotal example where like I kind of disregarded or I went completely opposite of that advice. And it kind of worked. But at the same time, not really. It's when I was doing fencing at like a high level, and when I was like between like 16 and 20 years old. Uh, what what I was that kind of person that really didn't practice techniques a lot. I was really lazy on learning the fundamentals. Uh, like it's so funny because like I went to the world championship twice, and I became a Norwegian champion before I learned to do a lunge, which is the most basic move
Yeah,
in fencing. It's literally
it's
the thing you do
it
in
is
day
day
one.
one stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I've coached
uh,
fencing for quite a few years now. Beginners when I was like super young for a few years, and now I'm the head coach of a club at the best sports uni in the world. And that's like literal day one stuff. It's the first thing
yeah,
they learn. It's the first attack. It's like the basics. It would be like it would be the Counter Strike equivalent of like learning how to use rifles. Like the AK-47 shoots heads, like that kind of thing. It's super
yeah,
super basic.
yeah. And but the thing was that like uh, I the only thing I practiced in the whole time um was how to win. It was, and when it's like it wasn't the fact that I was just grinding through practice matches and through lessons, but it was only that like at every moment in time, my only focus was okay. First, I need to find the parameters. Like, what is my physical condition? What's the physical condition of the opponent? What's his tendencies? and then I would only work on how I could break him, how I could find an opening and punish him. And it was that kind of practice is you can do it. It's I would if I was going back today, I would still the first year or so I would focus on the fundamentals because you when you don't focus on fundamentals and you just focus on winning, you will end up coming at the wall in like the mid high level where it's really hard to overcome because people actually understand your play better and they understand how you do things and they can just shut you down.
Exactly.
And that wall is very distressing to go over because you start just you're used to getting freebies and then suddenly you just lose everything. Um, but it's the thing that like if you have to practice, like it's better to have a purposeful practice that is quote unquote bad than to have even the best like practice that has no purpose. And it's uh, yeah, like you need to set goals for yourself, and quantity goals are usually not good. Simply because it makes the experience very binary. For example, if I'm gonna be like, oh, okay, I'm new to Counter Strike, and I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna on Mirage, I'm gonna go middle every time, for like 5 games in a row, every round. Then I really don't I don't look at the texture of the game. I don't look at the tendencies of the opponents. And it ends up being that like I will go through the motions. I will mess up. I will not analyze why I messed up because like in my head I have already achieved the objective.
Yeah.
Because I have done what I did,
Exactly.
what I was supposed to do, and yeah, numeric goals are pretty much always bad, except for example, if you let's say for example you are running and you realize, oh, I'm lacking stamina for the marathon, then you can do it because then it's a clear thing that it's a clear lack of your game. And it's also like if for example if you are losing to you are not able to land shots at the game because like you practice once a week, then yeah, of course you need to up the practice, but
Yeah.
it's always important to find a purpose and to like ask yourself, why am I doing this? Because too many people are doing like really basic mistakes of not prioritizing goals. It's like always also like uh imagine if you were imagine if you went to uni, right? And there wouldn't be like tests. There would just be like study for 5 years. Would we learn anything? Like it's just study for 5 years and then we're done because it's important to have goals and it's important to also be able to mold to create objectives that are flexible enough to be able to analyze situations and not just quantifying.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No,
that's basically
100%. That's it's very important. And also when you're putting in the practice, putting in the hours, it is you need to be very focused on what you want to achieve. And have a specific technique focuses and specific focuses all the time. If not, you're not gonna do anything. As you said, if you do play your 10 Mirage games and you play mid every round for those 10 games, it's yeah cool. But if you don't go back and analyze like this round, why did I get killed? And why did I not get killed in this other round? Like what worked well, what didn't work well? If the answer is just, well, my aim isn't good enough, well then what to do about it is very simple. Then you need to hop into a deathmatch or an aim server, and you need to practice over and over and over again, right? Until you get better, and then suddenly that's quantifiable. But then again, every time you go play deathmatch, go play aimbots or whatever, then you need to be focused, not just running around shooting people, but you need to actually focus on every kill, your crosshair placement at all times. You need to be focused on your movement, your strafing, your counter strafing, to ensure that instead of getting, say, 10,000 kills lazily, you can get 1,000 kills with high focus, and you'll actually get a result. You'll actually do better, and that also save you more time, so you can then also focus on other areas of getting your game up. And I think that's a really important factor that a lot of people seem to not think about as much, not worry about as much. Because I see a lot of people that have like not that many hours in Counter Strike. I mean, like 2,000 hours, which in CS isn't a lot, admittedly, if you want to get good. But they're like terrible at the game. There's but I don't have 10k hours, but I will get better. And then they play and play, and I know some people with 8,000 hours that are in like the gold Nova levels, but are actually trying to get good apparently. But it was like, but I don't have 10k hours here, but I'll get better. But the thing is, you'll never get better if you don't focus, if you don't actually want to get better, if you don't put in the right amount of work. I mean, these guys have more than twice my hours, and they can't, they're barely average at the game. And I think focused practice is far outweighs the amount of hours you have or the amount of time you put in. Because you need to make sure that every time you do go to practice, you train, you do anything, it needs to be 100% sorted towards your goal, and not just random practice, random hours. Then it could actually, as you say, be better to do the hardest thing, which is restitution. So if you're not feeling it one day, it could actually be better to take a day off to then be able to lock it completely down the day after. And I think that's something that's I think it's better now than it was. But I still think it's a factor that's overlooked a lot of the time in the professional world in general.
100%. And yeah, and it's also one issue also is that like we often spoils ourselves with practice. It's I for me, like I feel like there's two types of players: mechanical players and intellectual or cerebral players. And what it is that there's like often you either prefer being really good at the mechanics of something, or you prefer the knowledge of it. And
100%.
for example, I am a knowledge player. I always like to read up on stuff, and I like to learn strats and outsmart my opponents. But the problem is that I don't put when I try to learn shooters like Counter Strike or Siege, I don't try to properly respect the importance of the mechanics. So I end up wasting my time because I'm like, oh, okay. Did you know that on Mirage you could do this one nade spot, so you can like blind your opponent, but then I can't. Like, okay, I'm blinded my opponent, but then I can't swing because I will never hit him.
Yeah, it's like if you full swing out and then you get shot in the head, you're like, wait a minute, what
Yeah,
the fuck? That was supposed to happen.
like we had like to tell you how horrible I am at Counter Strike. We had a game where I had 100% headshot percentage. And you might be thinking, what? 100% headshot? That's crazy. Like, he's the best in the world. Everything
Literal
is
scream.
perfect.
Yep.
The thing is, I got the 100% headshot percentage because I hit one shot.
Yeah.
The entire game.
That was one kill the entire game, and it wasn't the last round of the game. And I think we
Yeah,
lost 13-2.
it was so bad. Oh, yeah, no, it's,
Yeah, so I think it's important to have a holistic image, but as I said, there very often are two different type of players: the ones with mechanical focus and the ones with more like cerebral or intuitive focus. I'm also like Anton, very much on the intuitive focus. My aim is always a thing in CS that has been holding me back. I've consistently always had like mid aim compared to mid level, but I was good at a lot of the other factors. Which made me a more holistic player. But that's a lot of people don't understand. Like gamers like Shroud, or streamers like Shroud, I should say now, who I mean touches any game and he's just fucking crazy, right? PUBG, when that turned out, he's one of the best in the world. I saw him just recently play Rainbow Six with Jinxie, and he was fucking crazy. Yeah, like he's better aim, just pure mechanics, than most players in the games. And a lot of people wonder why he stopped being pro in CS. And that's because he was actually kicked from the Cloud9 roster, together with nothing, after the famous summer of 2015, where they won absolutely nothing but looked damn good doing it. If anybody knows when they played in tank tops on stages. But the reason why he was removed, not because of his lack of aim. He had crazy good aim. Maybe the best aim in the US at the time. Probably the best aim in the US at the time. However, every single other aspect of his game was so lacking. Everything from his comms to his a bit of his mindset to just a general understanding of kind of how teams should work together. I mean, this is 10 years ago. I was like around 20, so like around our age, well, around my age when he, when then this was all relevant. But it's still then when you look at the holistic image of the game, it's really hard to understand. Yes, mechanics were great, but if you don't understand the team play or the nades, the setups, the flash, and that just doesn't click for you, and if you don't use enough time in practicing all of that, it's not gonna work. And the same thing, you famous of Scream, who is current Valorant pro, did very well in Valorant. He had the exact same problem where he had insane aim. He would just run and headshots while moving. Well, everything was almost perfect mechanically, which made him super exciting to watch. But when it came to even doing like a simple grenade lineup, he just didn't do it. There's famously a clip from a stream of his where he's trying to like show some pro nades on Inferno, and he throws it and he fails. He goes like, "No, guys, it's not like this, it's like this," and then he fails like a multiple, I think like 20 or 30 times. And I'm just like, you play on a pro team that's main map is Inferno, and you don't know how to throw the B volley? That's crazy. Which is why he also had a relatively short stint of a career in Counter Strike. Because once the util became so important, he just couldn't keep up. So I definitely think there's a niche balance of what makes a great player. They need to have intuition. They need to just naturally understand the game very well. Yeah, we have players like looks like Donk, but I can guarantee Simple and Sivu, they just read the game. It looks like they have wall hacks the whole time just because they have just such a deep understanding of players and movements and mindsets and everything. And then you also have like the pure mechanical aim, the pure mechanical skill. If you look at players like Nico or Rops, they just don't miss ever. They swing any angle, they never miss. The absolute perfect mechanics. Then you also need like a mix of highly like intelligent players. Like I mean, you have RGL such as Huxley and Carrigan that barely get any kills, but they're so intelligent and knowledgeable about a lot of the ways the game at a pro level will unfold and work that teams are willing to, in theory, have one player less with their stats because they know that they will be able to outstrat and outthink and outplay. And again, it's all about that balance. You need to have a more holistic view of it. And the best players in the world, they can combine all three in some sense. They're great mechanical players, they have great intuition, and they're great cerebral players. They have a good understanding of the game. And it's almost impossible to find somebody that has all these assortments. Which is why people like me and Anton aren't good at well, anything specifically. So
Yeah, I was good at Magic at one point.
there you go. Yeah.
Oh, damn. But yeah, like and it's also funny. Like it also depends very much on the region. For example, a very big example of this is League of Legends. Between
What
the
regions are we talking about now? Just so we're not talking about some specific regions that we maybe shouldn't talk about.
okay, the LCK and the LPL. There we go.
There we go.
Like perfect. Like let's hope the YouTube the detection algorithm isn't that good.
Probably not. No.
So the thing is, like, for example, LCK is very very cerebral. It's actually like the most weird league to watch because it's like a team can win a game of League of Legends there without any kills at all. It's because everything is so methodical about rotations and building up very small advantages and not giving the opponent the chance to play. Meanwhile, in the LPL, which is like geographically, it's like not far away at all. It's like completely different style. Where like you have psychopaths just playing, just fighting from level one, like for every second of the game, and their like mechanics are way more valued because like if you're going to have 50 fights in a game, then if you can win 40 or if you can win 45, it makes a lot more difference than like in the LCK where like you have maybe 3 fights in the entire game. And it's yeah, it's interesting how like different regions stuff have like different approaches to it. It's always also for example like That's why, for example, in different regions, different maps in different games are prioritized because, for example, in some places, for example, maps like Breeze and Icebox and Valorant are just completely hated, where in other places there are like the favorite maps of the teams. But yeah, like enough about the setting goals and practice and priorities and stuff. We saw an insane Rainbow Siege finals of the Invitational.
Yes, yes, we
Uh,
did.
yeah,
Absolutely. One of the best esports events I think I've watched in a while. It was really, really well put up with everything from the entertainment to the matches to the casting. I think everything was uh, really well done. And I haven't watched a lot. I've watched some R6 Pro League. I know Anton hasn't watched a lot of R6 Pro League. But I
yeah,
thought
nah,
I had a lot of fun. I thought it was a fantastic showing of esports.
yeah. Like it was W7M versus Faint's Clan, and both teams were full of Brazilian players in Brazil.
Yep,
Which was it was really crazy. Like you have two brothers on the opposite teams
yeah, it was
in a
fun.
final, which is like the most insane
Yeah,
storyline ever.
I mean, Brazil have been dominant in R6 for so long, and of course W7M being the crowd favorites, as they are from Sao Paulo, where the finals were held. They ended up taking it 3-2 after a super exciting, seemed like one-sided match, and suddenly it's close up again, overtimes. I mean, it had it all. Fantastic final, great storylines as well.
100%, and it was so close. Where like the last we ended up winning. W7M ended up winning 3-2 in an overtime.
Yep,
In a best of five, which is like it's completely crazy. And it was so crazy because FaZe Clan ended up with they ended up being in the upper brackets, so they had the advantage of picking the first map of the game,
yep.
which W7M could not ban, and they picked Oregon, and they completely demolished
Yeah, there
W7M Oregon.
were people
Yeah.
started talking about if this could actually possibly set up like a 7-0 led like first ever 7-0 scene win, which would have been crazy. We didn't see the 7-0. It was 6-0, then double 7M got around before they got demolished 7-1. But still completely insane.
Mm. Yeah, and it was what's so fun about Siege is that as a spectator, it's really hard to gauge the tempo of the round. I feel like in Counter Strike, where like you have like as a spectator, you know you know the flow of the game like 2 or 3 seconds before it happens.
Yeah,
Because you get a lot of information that the players don't have.
yeah,
But in Siege, it's because it's so chaotic. It's you might just see like, oh, like five players just it's there's 2 minutes left. Five players are just methodically covering angles and trying to find ways of opening, and suddenly boom, 2 players left, and you're like, wait, what?
yeah. And I think
Crazy.
there are a lot of this is mostly what I've been critical of when it comes to the viewer experience of R6, is that as a new viewer and even myself that have played a decent amount of Rainbow Six and watched some of it, it's still hard to pay attention to. I think Counter Strike, the map designs are very clean and simple, and you always have a mini map where all the players are on, so it's easy to see where people are in comparison to each other. R6 doesn't have a mini map in game, but it doesn't have a mini map or any type of map for spectators watching either. So it's very hard to tell where players are encountered to each other, especially when you have walls that can be wall banged and the whole map can be destroyed and destructed. So two players that look very far apart suddenly can kill each other because of all the mechanics the game deploys, which I think is what makes the game so much fun to play, but it's also what makes the game very hard to learn and even harder to watch as a new player.
Hmm, definitely. And the problem also is that like you have also verticality. So
Yep.
it's you see a lot in the start of the rounds. You see like a top-down view to show where the agents are and stuff, and where the defense are. But the problem is that often the maps have like 2 to 3 floors, and really hard for it's really hard to be able to to have a clear view of the action because there are so many dynamic points of focus. It's also, for example, why Overwatch suffered for a while as an esport because there was just too much happening at too many places. But I think it's esport like Rainbow Six Siege is a very has a very good foundation for esports because it's very intense. It's dynamic. It's unpredictable. But they need to find a way to display it more cleanly. Because like sometimes it's like it feels like it feels like you're getting just like everything just thrown at you, and you're just like, okay, what's going on? Like I don't know what's happening. Um,
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. But something I thought we could slightly get into is double eliminations playoffs. I'm personally not a fan, and I think this final has an issue that double eliminations often run into, which is that W7M actually lost in the first round. They got beaten by Sonic's Esports, Sonic's.
mm,
Very early. No, Wolves. Sorry, they were beat by Wolves Esports. That then went to and faced Sonics. And they were beaten the first round, and then they fought themselves throughout the whole lower bracket. Had a fantastic showing, great match against G2, and then were its pro before ending up in the final. So W7M did lose a best of two. They lost it 2-1. Or best three, sorry, 2-1 in the first round. FaZe Clan also lost once. 3-2 against W7M in the grand finals. However, this means that both teams have actually lost a series.
mm,
But this being double elimination, FaZe Clan has now lost as much as W7M has. So, but W7M were crowned the champions. But they chose to dignify this by making FaZe top seed and making them pick whatever map they wanted, which FaZe Clan did want, winning clue. So, but I would still say or argue that this isn't necessarily a fair way of setting up tournaments. I mean, in a lot of classical sports, the way they do it, badminton, tennis, chess, for example, that do use double elimination, then they have a grand finals. But if the upper bracket runner loses the grand finals, then they have a secondary grand finals when they're back at it, because then they're both lost once, because it's still double elimination. You can still be eliminated once before, and you can still keep playing. I know in esports, they've tried to implement this a few times. I know in ESL Pro League, they used it, but they went away from it. But that's basically where the upper bracket, whoever had the upper bracket one, in a best of five, they start up with just one map automatic win. So they rub 1-0 in a best of five from the start. So they only need to win two maps, while the others would then need to string together three. Which is also a way of doing it. But I almost always find, unless you do like a double finals format, that doing an upper bracket run is often not worth it, as you'll be playing as many matches as the lower bracket, and you'll often be meeting way better teams, like the winners of every single match. Well, if you do the lower bracket run, you'll be meeting the losers of every single match up until the end. So I've always felt in a way that having the dual eliminations sometimes gives an unfair advantage to whoever makes a lower bracket run on the way up, especially if they lose early, which happened in this case. What's your thoughts on the double elimination format?
I mean, it's personally I like it simply because of you can simply because it reduces the risks of it reduces the risks of like the attraction of the tournament just getting blown out like completely randomly. Because in league it has been a problem for a while uh, where like they've been experimenting with a lot of formats, and you suddenly just see like the favorite team just get locked out of worlds because of they lost a very random match that they shouldn't have. But at the same time, the problem is also like you need to give an advantage to the team that goes to the upper bracket, either less games or be able to give them a lead in the grand final, because yeah, it's a problem where like people are It's a problem if people are playing the matches and be like, oh, I don't care if I lose this one because I have a safety net. And it's um, it's really important to have a system where you can actually where you where you feel penalized for losing the first match. Because if there's not there, then you like the first round of gameplay is going to be like a lot lower quality because you don't have the pressure, you don't have the stakes to do so. And yeah, the one thing that is bad with that kind of format is that also it hurts underdogs, right? Because like it's like a lot of teams that are like they know they're not in the top contention, but they're still at the tournament. Like a very valid strategy there is to, for example, create cheese strats and like invest time in finding alternative strategies that like people haven't seen yet, and people have to like find a way to debunk them. Um, and I personally think that that's a very important part of the game to be able to refresh the game over and over. Like for example, when for example, like all of mice are doing the boost completely changed the nature of everything. And it's important to be able to have formats that can give rise to that creativity. But the problem is if you do a cheat strat once, it will not work again. So if you have a double elimination format, if you are the team that like invested time into creating interesting strategies, and then you face off against a team that like conventionally has trained, after the team that has conventionally trained, they adjust for your cheese in the upper bracket, then final, then yeah, you lose, and it's yeah, it's frustrating for a lot of lower ranked teams to have to deal with this issue. Um, but person, I think I'm 50-50 on it. If it's built in well, then you can do it. And one way that you could solve this was to do you do upper bracket, which is a straight run. But then you can do a lower bracket, or instead of doing a lower bracket, you do a Swiss style tournament in the like for the losers. Or like for example, if you lost in the first round, you need to win 5 out of 5 games. If you lost in the second round, you need to win 4 out of 5, like and so forth and so forth. And the first one that reaches the goal can qualify. Um, that could be an interesting idea, but it's also like just me in my head thinking about it, so it probably has a lot of issues that I don't know
Yeah,
about yet.
yeah. No,
But
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing dual elimination more. It's been completely removed from Counter Strike because of all the aforementioned problems. Because it's really hard in esports to do what you do in classical sports, which is when you have double elimination, which is just play two grand finals.
mm,
If the top bracket team if the top bracket team wins the first grand final, they're champions. But if they lose, then they've been only lost one match. So then you play another grand finals, right? Because then it'll be the same
mm,
sport. I think that makes sense. But I think for esports, I just don't think it makes as much sense as the viewer experience is then a bit chopped up, and then especially with you'd have to then play like two best of threes in a day or two best of fives, or you have to have two finals days, and I don't really know how the implications of that work. But I think dual elimination can work very well. I mean,
mm,
especially in majors and Counter Strike, there has been not really a problem, but it has been a tendency or a thing
mm,
where loads of teams usually don't see loads of underdogs qualify or get really far. I mean, you have like the if you go back to like 2019, you have the whole easy for N story with them qualifying and crushing big teams. When they meet like the Astralises of the world, the best team in the world, they got crushed. But then, more famously or more importantly, I'd argue, you have what happened in the last major in Paris, where Vitality took it quite dominantly, to nobody's surprise. But even in on the when they got to the stage in the quarterfinals, I'll say about there was Vitality was there, FaZe Clan were there and Heroic were there. Outside of them, there were only underdog teams. There was the British team that got further. Apex got into the semis. The region team, that's good performance, but had nothing to do there. You had Gamer Legion that got to the grand finals because they beat Heroic on a flimsy looking win, and then they only had to beat another underdog team to get into the grand finals, and then they got wrecked in the end. And Vitality just sweep the whole major with less issues. And having a double elimination there, when your FaZe getting eliminated first, they would then end up playing, I think, the British team second, then beat them, right? And then you could suddenly you could end up with a Vitality FaZe final or a Vitality Heroic final, most likely. As unluckily, Heroic and FaZe Clan, the two other only real contenders. I think Vitality would have won anyways, but them beating in the quarters while there were only bad teams or not as good teams, meaning in others would give the top teams a chance to get further and even play grand finals, which also would improve the viewer experience, as the viewer usually wants to watch the best compete and the best compete against each other. So I think it offers up a lot of interesting factors, but I felt specifically for this the Invitational, the R6 Invitational, that it didn't offer enough that FaZe Clan came through the upper brackets. I think they maybe could have been just given the first map like for free or whatever, and then started the pick and ban. FaZe Clan would of course get first pick ban as standardized, or just try to solve it in any other way really, because I just don't think the compensation is worth it. Because even if you look at the map round difference for the tournament or for the playoffs, FaZe Clan played less maps and less matches, but they only lost a single map to W7M, which they lost 3-2. Well, W7M dropped maps to loads of teams. But to be fair, it was a fantastic match, and they did win it fair and square in the finals. Great performance from them. So I'm not taking anything away from their win. I'm just questioning if the system they won under is optimal for, one, the sport, and two, the viewership.
Yeah, no, the problem with giving FaZe the first map is that you risk FaZe getting a 2-0, and then it just becomes weird, like, because it's just like, then the event lasts for 1.5 hours, and it's a grand final, and it kind of kills the mood, right? What they could have done is maybe you can, for example, give the first win, but then make it the best of 7. Because then you can get you can get like minimum 3 and maximum 6 games, which I think is a healthy duration for the finals. But it's really it's a hard problem to solve, and it's also the kind of problem that you can waste too much time trying to solve it. And it's like, for example, it's like starting a startup, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna innovate. I'm gonna focus my innovation of the company on my employees' contracts. It's why are you innovating in that space? Because when you can innovate in other spaces, because it's I feel like for every endeavor you have like a limited amount of creativity and innovation that you can like spend. It's not the number you can see, but it's like at the end of the day, we are humans, so we have a limit on what to do. So I feel like it's maybe not really worth it to overthink such things, but at the same time, it's different people have different opinions, right?
Of
And
course.
for some people having FaZe get an advantage at all is too generous. For some people it's not enough. For some people it's just like they don't want this format at all because they want the stakes to be higher, and it's at the end of the day you can't please
No,
everybody.
of course not.
So yeah, it's just I feel like it's very you have to see case by case basis. Like for example, if for example the games would last, let's say like the games, let's say like you replace the Siege with Dota,
Yeah, okay.
where a game can last 2 hours,
Yep,
but it can also last 20 minutes.
sure.
Um, then you can't really give that advantage, like with an extra map, because it's too volatile. It can you can end up having a finals of 40 minutes.
Yeah,
But
yeah, true. But
but with Siege,
what they have
you
done in Dota previously, when they've used double eliminations for some of the pro leagues, is that they've actually just played two finals. They've
mm,
had like a grand final, and then if I think like a best of three formats is usually the Dota formula. And then if the lower bracket team won, then there was another best of three
mm.
grand final. And they just played it, which is the normal way of doing it. But the Dota viewership and Dota, I think, fan base is very different from, say, Siege or Counter Strike or even League.
Yeah, I mean, Dota player are masochists. Like it's you you should honestly like remove streams. Like you should remove video and just have like a radio stream, like baseball in like the 60s.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like
Dota people
honestly,
are not like the rest of us.
yeah, no, no, it's like Dota is where like League players realize that they're not special. It's like it's just a crazy thing. Like it's when you like you play you think you play League of Legends, but suddenly you play StarCraft, and suddenly like you get Baldur's Gate. You're like, what the fuck is this? Like it's just it's an abomination that works because it's so excessively balanced and everything. And yeah, the people that play it are crazy. It's yeah, they're crazy, man.
Oh yeah, it's very much a different thing.
Yeah.
Oof.
And they're most of a certain nationality that we will not mention because of
Yes,
yeah.
from the CIS region, as it's so nicely named in esports. Yeah, I think we should talk a bit about the PGL Major RMRs, which we did cover in the episode that didn't release, but swiftly recap for our A, you probably know, versus Pro and G2 taking the 3-0 slots. G2 finally being back in form. This is two weeks ago now. Well, just over a week ago it ended. G2 finally being back in form. Did actually beat FaZe Clan dominantly in the 2-0 fashion. Don't think anybody saw that one coming. FaZe Clan, of course, making quick work and winning the next one. Your other qualifiers, qualified teams are Navi, Koi, Eternal Fire, Saw, and Amcal. While your three other teams are sent to a what's called the Last Chance qualifier, which, if you don't know, is something they implemented a few years ago because a lot of people were complaining that, say, a really good European team didn't qualify, but then a really, really like comparatively bad team from, say, Australia did qualify. And then they would argue, well, this European team would beat this Australian team any day of the week. Shouldn't the best teams all the best teams should go to the major no matter where they're from? Like, you shouldn't put that much. Shouldn't have the nationality of the team be as big as a factor. So what they basically did is that they took the teams that just didn't qualify from each region, put them all into a last chance qualifier, is what they're throwing this year together, so that we ensure that we have the best Counter-Strike at the major. And Betspoon, Fnatic, and Nine Pandas were all sent to the last chance qualifier. Try to qualify. There were two main setups within the RMRA. And it was, of course, Falcons not qualifying with their new multi-million-dollar roster. They announced only days after they didn't qualify that they were benching Boros and signing Simple, something which broke Twitter completely, and it was the number 3 trending subject on Twitter in general, which is crazy. So Falcons with big money moves. Apparently, Simple did say on a stream that he's paid $1 million a month for his contract, which I think is fucking insane. It's by far the biggest esports contract ever signed. Most teams don't pay that much for all their players combined in a month. So that's crazy to hear. But he's currently only on loan for, I believe, 2 months starting after the major. And then, of course, Ninjas in Pajamas, maybe one of the most legendary esports orgs of all time, went out on dead last place, 16th place. Didn't win a match, didn't win a map. Very much struggling, which is always sad to see such legendary orgs fall that flat. But let's move over to the RMRB, which is this podcast's favorite topic to talk about, teams getting donked. And teams did get donked. I mean, Spirit opening match against ENS, they won it 13-0 on Nuke, which was technically an ENS map pick and not a Spirit map pick. The Spirit just didn't care. They just didn't care. And then they, I believe, beat Astralis, I think 13-1 or 13-2. And everybody thought everybody was going to get donked. However, Astralis did manage to figure something out, because they picked Vertigo. And Donk was actually not the best player in Vertigo. It happens to be Zero, Spirit's star opper, top 5 opper in the world, as the best map. However, Donk, not that comfortable in Vertigo seems, didn't frag very well. So when Spirit went up for the 3-0 match, or the 2-0 match against Mousesports also picked Vertigo. Mousesports actually haven't played that much, but they realized there's only one way to win this. They do shut down Donk. And they did. They won Vertigo and ended up closing out the series 2-1, taking the 3-0 spot together with Cloud9. Cloud9 beating Vitality. Vitality Spirit did make quick work, took the 3-1 slots, but the tournament didn't actually get donked. People were able to it seems, out-map and out-strat Team Spirit. And although you have star players on team like Shiro, it seems like when Donk isn't top rank carrying, they don't look that scary.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's kind of, it's a multitude of factors. It's also like the performance of Katowice was so insane that we kind of forget that he's also a human like the rest of us, and that like it's you don't always perform at your A game, and yeah, that like, and also the other thing is that he has probably the most watched demos on the whole planet right now.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like, it's, if you're a team and you're like in the same hemisphere as him, and you're at the same level, then you are going to watch everything he has played, and it's a lot harder to stay at the top cleanly than it is to get there, because then you have so much less to win, right? Because like, to win you have to, if you win you only keep your status quo, but everyone is hungry to take you, and especially when like you have like a monster team in the tournament, it's it basically means that like there's one slot less in the whole tournament. So you have to, so if you win against the best team, then you get, then your chances of getting through are skyrocketing, and that's why like so many people are preparing. And also it's just, I feel like as humans, we enjoy trying to expose frauds wherever we might be. And like, I'm not saying Doc is a fraud, not at all, but like, it's in our nature to try to find weaknesses in people that we think shouldn't be that good. And if you look at Twitter at Katowice, like, I think like the number of people, like, if I had $1 for every person that would like check his PC, then yeah, I think we wouldn't be doing this podcast right now.
No, and I think Donk is the most watched, most praised player in the world right now, but it's also the most hated player in the world right now. And that always happens when somebody comes up and is fucking crazy at the game. It's like Simple said after winning his majors that he needs new haters, because all those haters have now become his fans. Which happened after he showed years of consistency. And, you know, I think a lot of people forget that Donk is, at the end of the day, just a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Because when you see this fucking demon in the server just ripping heads off, but at the end of the day, he is just a 17-year-old kid that happens to be just the craziest player anyone's ever seen. He's tied for the highest rating in an S tier tournament in Counter Strike. I believe his average rating in Katowice ended up being like 1.52 or something. It's around there, and the only player to ever to rival that is Nico in IEM New York 2017, playing for FaZe Clan, where he had like a 1.55 or something. So I think he was tied for the stage event, or like the playoffs event, and I think he just got beat for an event this whole, which is crazy because Nick again has played professionally at the very top level since 2014 and always been one of the best players in the world. The dog just comes in first ever S tier event and wins it, and it's Katowice out of all the events he could have won, and with that monster performance even on stage. But it does. I mean, I don't think anybody realistically thought it could last. Like that level is just so unnatural that it's difficult to, even if the rest of your team is playing well, it will be difficult to find enough kills on the map to keep up with those scores, right?
Mm.
But to Nico's, I think, avail and anger, and to G2's suffering, the only map that Dawn can be beat on, it seems, is the map they don't play. So I think I guess Nico and G2 and the boys will have to start re-stratting a bit and thinking about how they can beat Donk without playing Vertigo, as Nico famously tweets about once a week about how bad Vertigo is. So we'll have to see if some other teams could also find some solutions to beating the Donk problem.
Yeah, no, it's so funny that like players like him literally like change the game. It's like Steph Curry, right?
Yeah,
Where like a lot of basketball players in the NBA, they don't like Steph simply because he has morphed the game so much. Where before it used to be all those, everyone would be like playing to the paint and dunking the play, and shooting 3 points wasn't seen as a reliable strategy. It was more like, oh shit, I have 2 seconds left on the clock, I just need to do something. But with Steph, like the game has completely changed. It's uh, he like it's The game seems a lot more like, a lot less people are pushing up to the basket, and a lot more people are doing frees, and it's especially when like it's really hard for an athlete when there's someone else that is just like so dominant that like every rational thing you have in your process just doesn't work, and you need to rethink it, and you need to change it, it's also must be so uncomfortable to switch maps like that, like the one map that you weren't supposed to play because you're like, oh okay, I can't play it, we just ban it anyways, and it just ends up being the one map you need to play.
yeah,
And uh and yeah, but the thing is, I think since he's 17 years old, he just simply doesn't have that much experience. Even though he has been playing since 4, it's playing on a professional level is different from playing in Faceit, playing in a Premiere, and so forth. So it's difficult to I think like he will have weaknesses in the first 2 or 3 years, 100%. But like the big question is he gonna be able to develop versatility? And is he gonna be a completely full-fledged phenom? Because I feel like every few years there are people that are prodigies, but the way from being a prodigy, a lot of people equate being a prodigy to becoming the greatest of all time.
yeah, yeah.
But
Those are
the
different.
thing is that path is a lot longer and a lot harder than people realize. And it's still very early days to say like if Donk is gonna be the greatest person of or greatest player of all time, because like he might fall off in 2 years.
Oh yeah,
When we
it's
never know.
possible, and it wouldn't be the first time. I mean, I think the best example in Counter Strike would be Kirby at
Mm.
18-year-olds, and I think 2 months became the major MVP of the 2017 Atlanta major for Astralis. And 2 months later, he didn't re-sign his contract with Astralis. His mental health was in the bin because nobody reached out to him because they didn't have that kind of support system. And he ended up playing for lots of mid teams. And his career was kind of over at that point at the very top level, which is sad to see. Because again, he was the consistent type of player that could have been one of the best in the world. And it's always completely unpredictable to see what's going. We can never guarantee what's going to happen in the future, or how
Mm.
players will play in the future. It's always very very hard to tell, but I think Donk could be the best player in the world in a year,
Mm.
in 2 years, in 3 years. I think he got a long career as one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. But he's coming into a very different game than what used to be. Because you have to remember, like in the first year of CS, 11 years ago, 2013, you had Get Right, the best player in the world, Forrest, second best player in the world, for Invitatitonal Pajamas, and they're the 87-0 win streak in maps. That's never gonna happen again. No matter how good your team is, that's never gonna happen again. Olaf Meister, one of the people that was large that got me into Counter Strike, got me into watching Counter Strike. Loved watching Olaf Meister. 2015, he had 100% 1v1 win rate and 100% 1v2 win rate. And his 1v3 win rate was like 35%. His 1v4 win rate was around 30%. He had like out of the 1v5s he went for, he also won about 10%. Which means if you and a teammate are, oh yeah, we have a 2-on-1, the site's clean, we're gonna win this, and you're against Olaf Meister, statistically speaking, you lose. Which is, like, how is that even a thing, right? But that's because the game looked so different back then. It played different back then. The game has evolved, not much, but it's changed a little. But the way people think of the game, the way people utilize themselves, use utility, all of that, has changed. It's a lot harder to have those levels of individual impact and those levels of individual just like craziness. You don't really see that anymore. So I think it's very, very difficult to understand why someone can play the way Donk does and get away with it, kind of. It seems like he's not punished from many other plays. But I think it's
Mm.
also a good thing, because this also it forces other teams to innovate. And especially when we know we have IGL such as Carrigan for FaZe Clan, who is like the goat of innovating, creating new stuff, making any roster work, making any roster win. And I think a lot of IGLs like him will have a really good time trying to anti-strat, figure stuff out, and figure how to counterplay, cross-play teams like Team Spirit. Because recently, Donk has been talked a lot about, obviously. And Modesty before him, last year. But then Wonderful, we're not talking about at all, who plays for Navi, was another 17-year-old prodigy that's also crazy good, but not at the level Donks perform. And I think we'll see more and more young talents that are just insane. We don't understand how they're this good. And Donk is just not really even the first, but he's like the peak of many that have come up recently. And I think we need to, and I think the game needs to be able to adapt to that, and IGLs and teams need to be able to figure out ways to deal with this. Because if not, you'll have people like Mahonesi, like Donk, like Wonderful, like Jimpat, the Finnish prodigy from Mouse Sports that everyone's talking about. You'll often have them dominate again, ripping up top teams, and that's not going to be a consistent way to be able to like maintain the pro level of the game. So
Mm.
I'm very excited to see what kind of innovations the top teams and top IGLs come up with to be able to handle this better, so they don't get donked every major tournament.
Yeah, because it's gonna be kind of boring if if Dunk wins every 1v1 like for 2 years. And like it's important to, yeah, it's important to like the scene that like we have dominant players, but that also like teams work towards finding weaknesses. And it's also one of the big advantages of not having a franchise system is that this kind of thinking becomes a lot more natural. Because in the franchise system, it's if, for example, you're in the middle of the pack and your goal is to be as profitable as possible, then you might just be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna ignore Donk. When I'm gonna face against him, we're gonna lose. It's fine. Because it's not in my economic intention to do so. Because I already have a stable position in the league.
Yeah.
But with open leagues, it's with open leagues and open tournaments, it's so like if you're not prepared against team spirit, it's just a death sentence, right?
Yeah, 100%. You're fucked.
So then you have to you like the odds of you succeeding are so much lower if you don't prepare for it. So it's really good that I much prefer like open leagues to the
Yeah.
franchise system because of it.
Oh yeah,
Even
100%.
as an esports org co-founder, because like rationally for us, we don't like open leagues. Like
No,
it's
if we wanted to be as profitable as possible, we would ideally have a franchise league where we have a free spot every single year, where we're guaranteed a shared part of the sponsorship cup of the whole league, and we could just sit there, gain sponsorship money, and decide what to do with it ourselves.
mm,
But that's really unhealthy for the sports, and it's really unhealthy for the athletes, for everyone involved. Franchise leagues are always going to be worse when it comes to both viewership and especially for the sport itself, for esport itself. It completely fucks it all the time because new players and young talent players, they never get up to the pro teams. And loads of franchise leagues, like in Call of Duty, for an example, which is, well, the US was created this idea of franchising everything, right? In Call of Duty, there are only 2 European spots for teams. The other 14 are held by the same American teams that have the same lineups, and they usually end up around the same ranking every year. There's a few teams go up and down because the top teams switch on players, the bottom teams switch on players, but there's no real coherence. There's no real competition. And most players that are in these teams, they've been asking, well, yeah, do you actually think you guys are the best like players in the world? These are like, no. Because they meet like ranked demons that are like cover the top ranking points in all the competitive leagues that completely crush all of the pro teams, even when they're playing as like 4 stacks and 5 stacks, and they clap pro players like it was nothing. But these players will never be signed to teams because the players will have like big following and a big namesake, and the orgs would make less money if they have less famous players, etc. And there are also loads of teams playing in like open tournaments and stuff that basically make no money with crazy good players that absolutely could compete at the top, but you never see them.
apologies, I need to fix my charger.
Yeah, you may go
Sorry.
ahead.
uh,
But as I think franchising is definitely what's going to be the death of esports, and I'm super happy that the Blast Pro tried to create like a fully franchised league, which they luckily weren't able to do. Although they do have teams that are like within the Blast franchise, teams can still compete in all the open leagues like your ESLs, your major champs, and well anything else they'd like to compete in. I think franchising would be the absolute worst case for esports as a whole. Although some esports, of course, are franchised. Like, again, your CDL, League of Legends is partially franchised, but not fully franchised. They're in like a weird middle area. But it's definitely something I think we need to watch out for, because at the end of the day, it's just about making money and not actually about helping the esport in any significant way.
okay, I have to move to the living room because my APM is too bad and
Fire? Okay,
I
let's go.
can't plug in the charger right now.
Now you'll get a little free room tour here. We're
Yeah.
in the
Ooh.
hallway, it seems. In the
Oh,
living room here. Okay, a little quick
yeah.
spin around.
We're gonna leave. I'm gonna leave this in 3 days.
And move
So
in somewhere else. So let's dox you right now. So the new owners get fucked.
yeah, like yeah. I hope you guys are not that dedicated of fans that you're gonna make Under the Bridge gaming happen.
To see,
Just
that
like
would be
people,
dedication.
yeah, it's crazy. It's closing the door.
Yeah, you may go
But yeah,
ahead.
like it. But the thing is also like franchise leagues also really they really mess up the player market in the secondary leagues. Uh, a very good example of that is, or like, it's because of when you have a franchise league, like for example, the LEC in Europe, if League of Legends or the NBA or the NFL, then it makes it a natural and there's like a natural ending point for professional players. So a lot of secondary leagues will be like teams will be focused on provide. They will not be focused on winning their their leagues, but it will be focused on locking up as much talent as possible, and then selling
Yeah,
that talent
exactly.
to the tier one teams. And the problem that it creates is that you end up in a position where like uh, a lot of a lot of really talented players get locked up in the secondary league for like 3 to 7 years, because the teams that are signing them, they are waiting for a contract. Uh, they are waiting to sell them to the major league,
Yeah,
and especially when you have a league with limited spots, like for example LEC 10 Formula One has 20 drivers, then it might be really frustrating as it might be really frustrating when like you that like if you're a really super talent and you just stuck in the secondary league just waiting for the chance. For like for example, like what happened like last season with Oscar Piastri in the Formula One, where like he was a rook. He like won like a lot of Formula Two leagues. He was like Formula Three champion, Formula E champion, and the issue was that like he was stuck in the secondary league so long that by the time he got to Formula One as a rookie, he was 28 years old.
yeah, and he's way past his prime, and it's yeah,
Yeah, and like he got and because of that, like he got sacked after 10 races
yeah,
because if you're a super talent and you don't perform at 21, that's completely fine. But if you're 28, then the downside becomes so much greater
yeah,
it's because in a lot of young contracts you kind of have like you have the expectation that they're going to sign another contract afterwards if they're good. So the downside often becomes less pronounced the younger the players are.
yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, it's just it's messed up when like the teams are just yeah they're just focusing on window dressing their best players to sell them to the tier one teams.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. And I think that's a huge. I think of course there are two sides to it, but I mean, Formula One probably has the worst system. The whole sport seems to me very corrupt and not beneficial for like actual racing. It seems it's all about making money and viewership instead of the actual sport. But what franchising does bring out is that brings all the big teams, everybody's favorite teams out,
hmm,
which is why you'll see, and well, say Counter Strike, you'll already have teams that have qualified for all the big events. They're just invited teams, and that will be your Vitalities, your Face Clans. In this meta, you'll see Spirit and Mouse Sports probably invited as well, right? And say out of 16 teams, you'll have 8 teams that are the top teams in the world, or the teams that won like the big tournaments, like the major, like Katowice, they'll already be on the list. That means a lot of fans are gonna be like, my favorite team is there, the top teams are there, let's go. But then the last 8 spots of those 16, they go up into loads of open qualifiers in like all over the world if it's an international tournament, right? Which means any team in the world, like we will probably be playing some of the qualifiers for the launch for some big events, just to try it out because although we say we don't qualify, it's still great practice to play against teams from a more international situation and better teams with higher levels and different mindsets about the game. That's how you get better. But every team in the world, and I mean every team in the world, has a chance to play the biggest events, play the best events, and participate in all of this. Which I think is really cool and crucial, because then you have this balance between new talent coming in, such as Team Spirits, which hasn't been really impressive at all. They needed to qualify for all these events. I mean, they went through the qualifiers to get to Katowice. FaceClan didn't. They were invited. But then you have this nice balance with getting new teams in with you, fresh, young talents, young players, different mindsets, and we wouldn't know to this level who Donk was if he didn't win Katowice. If it was a franchise league, then Donk would never have played.
hmm.
Donk would, because of him being from the nation he's from, he would probably never be signed to a top team. Not in this meta. Maybe not for another 2 or 3 years. Because how is he supposed to prove himself playing against bad teams in lower leagues. He's not. That's that's just the truth of it.
Hmm.
So it's I think it's really good when you have a system where you give all teams a chance to qualify and all players a chance to play.
Hmm. Yeah, that's totally right. And yeah, and it's on honestly, it's such a yeah, as an athlete, you never feel like you have a season to throw away,
Yeah,
because it's just you don't know about your lifetime, and especially like it's as an athlete, like most of your earning power comes in like 1 or 2 in a 1 to 3 year stretch, uh, because like before that you have to first you need to get good enough, then you need to find a platform to prove yourself in, and then you finally can get the biggest contract. And it's the problem is that yeah, like it's as an athlete you're uh, like you have to make enough money to last to make it so that you can live a comfortable life afterwards. Because there's a lot of downsides of being an athlete. Like it's such a different way of life um, that a lot of people are really struggling to adapt after it. Like there are a lot of NFL players going broke after retired NFL players that go broke and stuff, and it's so important for athletes to make good money while they can, so that like if you're stuck like 3 years in a bad contract because of franchise politics, then you're not happy as a player, and it can really a lot of players just retire because just they don't have the risk taking required to go that route, which is totally fair because it's being being an athlete is probably like financially one of the scariest things if you're not in the cream of the crop. And even if you're in the cream of the crop, it takes is 1 season to just slide down and just be forgotten. So it's really important to make sure that you that it's important to for the players to make sure that they don't get stuck in these kinds of contracts. Um, yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. We are approaching an hour and a half, and
hmm,
I
we've
think
been yapping.
we have been yapping, but that's why we're here.
Hmm,
I think we have covered most things we wanted to talk about. I would again encourage everybody to tune in this weekend as we'll play qualifiers of Bergen games, and we know how much you love hearing our voices both on the podcast and on the cast when we are casting. And then on
hmm,
Tuesday, Silky, I believe, will be back for the cast. Um, so that's also going to be a lot of fun to have him back to cast our
hmm,
next pro game. This will not be Tuesday this week, which means this will be probably be out on Tuesday, so not today.
hmm.
Hope this podcast does get approved and we're not red listed or something now. That would be fantastic.
I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say the R word.
No, let's not that or that's it's about a nationality. Okay, it's not the. Anyways, let's try not to get cancelled.
Oh
Well,
no.
thank you guys for tuning in. This
Yeah.
has been the Check-In, the Cashout Cavaliers official podcast. Thank you for listening and watching, and we will see you again next week.
See ya. Bye bye.
Checking out.